Good day, people, and thanks for tuning in to this very first live broadcast on my channel. Now, just to give you a brief background, just to give you a brief background on why I started this channel, I have a strong passion for the semiconductor industry. Um, I do have a background in IT, but semiconductor chips and chip technology is something that has always piqued my interest, as well as general IoT, 5G, 6G technologies. This particular channel is focused on assisting people who have similar interest to keep abreast with the latest developments within that industry. It's quite fast paced with all the developments that are happening between the United States and China, the trade wars, the trade restrictions that America is imposing on China, as they can definitely see that China is slowly but surely, or rather fastly, overtaking the United States as a leader in everything technology. The last barrier, really, where the United States had an edge over China was with chip technology. And let's the formatting for this particular podcast is gonna be I will present it in a topic or rather a news item and then go through an article and then maybe discuss it for like 5 minutes and then go to the next one. So, for example, for today, I'm going to be focused on Huawei's HarmonyOS, Tata, the Indian company, and the strides they are making in the semiconductor industry as well. I'm going to go through China versus US, the trade restrictions, and how they've affected the landscape of the semiconductor industry. I'm going to cover Dell and their first X Elite laptop that is poised for release for this year. I'm going to talk about and compare the Apple M4 and M3 chip. I'm going to talk about Nvidia overtaking Qualcomm as the world's leading chip designer by revenue. We're going to talk about SMIC, which is the Chinese equivalent of ASML. Then I'm going to talk, the last article that I'm going to talk about is going to be Mindgrove, which is the Indian tech startup that has just released its very first SoC chip. So let me jump straight right into the first topic of today, which will be the Harmony OS article. Huawei reportedly switching to its homegrown platform Harmony OS next completely this year, ditching Android and expanding its ecosystem to 4,000 apps. The US trade ban on Huawei has materialized a completely different outcome than what the opposing authority envisioned, because the Chinese firm has not only mounted a strong comeback on its home turf with successive releases of flagship mass smartphones that have grown in popularity, but the company plans to one up its effort on the software side too. A new report states that Huawei fully intends to rid itself of Google's Android operating system by switching over to Harmony OS Next entirely. The new platform will reportedly house 4,000 apps at first. Harmony OS Next total applications count will rise to 5,000 within a year, with Huawei aiming to reach the 500,000 tally soon. The next version of Harmony OS is expected to ship with Huawei's upcoming Mate 70 flagship series. The new lineup is rumored to be unveiled in October this year and is said to be the company's first launch to support SMIC's 5nm chipset. Nikkei Asia reports that an added benefit of running Harmony OS next to the Mate 70 family is that the operating system utilizes memory 3 times more efficiently and supports on-device AI. However, every operating system needs a strong app ecosystem to grow in popularity, which appears to be Huawei's primary focus. The report states that Harmony OS Next has expanded to 4,000 apps, including Alipay and McDonald's. Huawei is said to eventually expand that app count to 5,000, with its ambitions raised towards the goal of 500,000 apps. Huawei attempted to reduce dependency on Google's Android OS by introducing the first version of HarmonyOS in 2021. However, investigations revealed that HarmonyOS was still based on Android because apps designed for Google's platform would be completely unusable if HarmonyOS was entirely independent of was an entirely independent OS. Huawei will reportedly change this aspect as HarmonyOS Next is said to be designed from scratch, with the operating system being developed in-house. Though it was first made for the Internet of Things, Huawei quickly realized that it needed to minimize the risk of the US trade ban by developing its own operating system. However, while there is looming excitement over the release of HarmonyOS Next, a massive cloud of uncertainty hangs over its success. To grow in popularity, app developers need to rewrite the code for this platform, which not only takes time but costs a substantial amount of money. WeChat, which is owned by Chinese firm Tencent, possesses some power over Harmony OS, rise since the messaging application boasts more than a billion users. In short, Huawei will have to cozy up to these companies if it wants its homegrown operating system to survive in China. Assuming the companies is successful in this endeavor, we will have a third smartphone OS competing with Apple's iOS and Google's Android. Now, that was a quick and interesting read regarding Huawei's ambitions to develop its own homegrown operating system for its smartphones and have up to 500,000 apps soon. It's quite ambitious, it's very difficult feat to achieve, and obviously very expensive. Given the innovation, the drive, and the ambition of Chinese entrepreneurs, it's deeply embedded within their culture. This is something that I think it's feasible. We will see how they will do in the next coming few years. But if you look at the recent Pura that they have released, it's getting very good reviews, and Huawei has reclaimed top spot in China now with that particular model. I think we shouldn't underestimate these guys at all. Now let's jump on to our second article. This one will be on Tata, which is the Indian conglomerate with a diverse range of businesses, manufacturing. They're also in tech within the Indian market. Let me just quickly put up the article here and see what it says. It says Tata reportedly progressing rapidly in semiconductor manufacturing. Tata Electronics reportedly shipped packaged chip samples to potential customers in several countries. It is in the final stages of tape out for chips in 28 to 65 nanometer, indicating the progress the Indian national champion and front runner in India's chip-making indigenization since its chip ambition. The Economic Times, citing an unnamed source, reported that Tata Electronics shipped some sample chips packaged at a pilot production line in its Bengaluru R&D center to partners in Japan, the US, and Europe. Another source said Tata is in near final stages for a successful tape-out of chips in 28 and above nodes. If accurate, the rumored developments may indicate Tata Electronics' progress in ATMP and foundry businesses. According to the report, the sample chips Tata Electronics shipped could be used in various products and were not designed for specific end devices. The chips nearing the final stages of tape-out are slated for commercial production in 2027. Nels Shah, Vice President at Counterpoint, emphasized the importance of Tata showcasing its chip design and manufacturing capabilities to potential customers and partners prior to the commissioning of the fabs within the next 30 to 36 months. Since India introduced the incentive policy for semiconductor and display fabs in 2021, the country approved 4 foundry and ATMP projects. Micron, which is proposed to invest 25.4 billion Indian rupees in setting up an ATMP facility. Is expected to ship its made in China chips in the first half of 2025. Tata Electronics committed to invest 910 billion Indian rupees and 270 billion Indian rupees in building a foundry and ATMP facility in Gujarat and Assam, respectively. CG Power and Industrial Solutions, along with its partners based in Japan and Thailand, announced an investment of 76 billion Indian rupees in an ATMP facility. There are other local companies, including Tesla Semiconductor and CDIL, that are foraying into the ATMP business, but their investment are not as large as Tata's Micron. Now, I hope you found that article quite insightful. It is something worth um, giving the Indians praise for. You know, India is one of those sleeping giants with a population larger than that of China. But if you look at their technological advancements, they don't speak to the talent and the human resources that India has. So while they are still very far in their chip production in terms of competitiveness with the world leaders, it is a step in the right direction, and we hope that the Indian government and the Indian private sector really put in financial resources so that we can see more of these foundries being established. The more competition, the better for everyone globally. Now, let me just quickly go on to the next article, which is going to be a general article on the state of competition between US and China in the semiconductor industry, right? Let me just quickly put up the article here. So the article reads, US restrictions on chips to backfire, experts warn. The US restrictions on the export of purely civilian semiconductor products to China and cutting supplies to specific Chinese companies are typical economic coercion practices which not only violate World Trade Organization rules but also seriously harm the interests of American companies, officials, and experts have said. The comments come after foreign media quoted anonymous sources as saying that the US government has revoked licenses that allowed companies including Intel and Qualcomm to ship chips used for laptops and handsets to China tech company Huawei Technologies. The spokesperson of the Ministry of Commerce said in a statement on Wednesday night that the reported US practices seriously contradicts its commitments of not seeking decoupling with China and not impeding China's development and are in direct contradiction to its claim of precisely defining national security. China will take all necessary measures to firmly defend the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese companies, the spokesperson added. Wei Jianguo, former vice minister of commerce, said, despite Washington's shift in rhetoric from decoupling to de-risking in key supply chains, the US government continues to tighten its controls over chip exports to China. The move is the latest evidence that to contain China's technological rise, the US government is leveraging all means, regardless of how much pain it will cause US companies, Wei said. Jiang Ligang, Director General of the Information Consumption Alliance, a telecommunications industry association in China, said the US chip restrictions will accelerate Chinese companies' efforts to achieve technological breakthroughs. For instance, Huawei's AI processors become highly sought after products in China after restrictions were imposed on the export of China US company Nvidia's most advanced AI chips, Jiang said. Meanwhile, despite Washington's prolonged curbs on Huawei, the Chinese tech company has managed to significantly grow its revenue and profits in quarter one of 2024. Huawei's revenue for quarter one of March rose about 37% to 178 billion yuan, which is about 24.7 billion US, while its net profit leapt from 564% to 19.65 billion yuan. Though the company did not disclose the reason for the jump, analysts said that it was partly driven by its strong comeback in the domestic smartphone market. Huawei returned to the top one position in the Chinese smartphone market from January to March after 13 quarters, holding a 17% market share, driven by the success of its Mate and Nova series, according to market research company Canalys. In this quarter, Huawei shipped 11.7 million smartphones, a remarkable 70% increase from a year earlier. This resurgence is notable given the challenges the company faced due to US sanctions, which led to a reorganization of its phone business, Canalys added. Huawei is returning to the international market in a low-key manner. The Chinese company has made the global debut of its latest Pura 70 series outside of China, starting in Malaysia earlier this month. The Pura 7 series are now also available for pre-sale in a few European countries that include Germany. Analysts said Huawei will revamp or rather ramp up aims to regain its share of overseas market this year, as long as its production capacity of smartphones can be guaranteed. I hope you found that article quite interesting and informative. Indeed, China's Huawei is living up to the challenge that it has been presented with by the American authorities. Many people, including myself, really, after former President Donald Trump imposed trade restriction on Huawei and removed Huawei from the Android platforms, many of us thought that their Huawei smartphones will just really go out of business, but they've came back strong and they are doing very well. This just goes to show that this decoupling strategy with the US is implementing is not working, because if you are going to impose sanctions on a very industrialized country like China, you are just forcing them to self-innovate, which means they are going to be your competitors for whatever business you were dominating previously. You're going to have a new competitor within that market segment. Let's jump right next to the next article, which will be on Dell, the American manufacturer of laptops and PCs, as well as other computing devices. And they've also announced that they will be developing their first Qualcomm Snapdragon X Elite powered laptop. Dell's first Snapdragon X Elite laptop shows up in leaked images. Key takeaways: the Dell Inspiron 14 Plus with Snapdragon X Elite processor features different ports, still maintains high-end design. Next generation Dell XPS 13 model may continue with Snapdragon X Elite or Intel Core Ultra chips for better AI performance. With Snapdragon laptops gaining prestige, upcoming event may reveal more devices from Microsoft, Asus, and Lenovo. We are only 10 days away from the big May 20th event where Microsoft and Qualcomm will fully unveil the first wave of AI PCs with Snapdragon X processors. And the leaks and teases are starting to pile up. This time, it's Dell's turn to have its first Snapdragon X Elite laptop revealed in leaked images. The laptop is reportedly the Dell Inspiron 14 Plus, a fairly high-end model in the company's lineup, and it's looking pretty good. We also get a glimpse at a supposed new Dell XPS 13 Plus model, though it's not clear yet what will power it. We recently reviewed the Inspiron 14 Plus here, but so far it's only been available with Intel processors. It's a great laptop that's not aimed at the more premium segment, but definitely sits at the high end of Dell's range. The purported Qualcomm version uncovered by Windows Report doesn't look too different, but it appears to have different ports. The report indicates two USB-C ports, one USB Type-A, and a micro SD card slot, but the Intel variant also featured HDMI. Aside from the design, we know that this Inspiron 14 Plus will be powered by the Snapdragon X Elite because the device leaked in Geekbench benchmark results at the end of April. So it should be all but confirmed. Aside from the ports and the processor inside of it, it's hard to say what else will be different with the inspiration with Inspiron 14 Plus. When Dell introduced its new XPS lineup for 2024 at CES, the new Dell XPS 13 basically replaced the XPS 13 Plus of the past 2 years. However, images of a new XPS 13-inch laptop have been spotted too. The laptop looks basically identical to the model that's already available, so it's unclear what might be new about this one. It's certainly possible that Dell is planning to introduce a Plus model with the Snapdragon X Elite, and that will be excellent news for Qualcomm. So far, the only premium devices we have heard of featuring this chip are the Microsoft Surface Pro 10 and Laptop 6. So this will give Snapdragon laptops a bit more prestige. It's also possible that it will come with Intel Core Ultra chips, but if that's the case, it will likely be featuring next generation models based on Lunar Lake architecture, which will enable much better AI performance. However, specs for this model remain unconfirmed, so we'll have to wait a little longer to find out. That being said, we are only a few days away from a big Snapdragon blowout, and by then we'll know a lot more about upcoming Snapdragon laptops. In addition to Microsoft, Asus has also publicly announced its presence at the event too, and the Lenovo laptop was also leaked. So this is quite interesting developments regarding the Snapdragon X Elite laptop powered, or rather chips powered laptops. Asus, Microsoft, Lenovo, and now Dell. Given all the positive news that has been circling on the internet regarding these X Elite chips, I think a lot of other manufacturers will be incorporating these chips into their laptops. It's interesting to see how this will pan out. I hope you found that article quite informative. Let's jump right into the our next read there, which is going to be on comparing the Apple M4 and M3 chips. Let me just pull up the article here. Says here M4 versus M3. How much better are Apple's latest chips? Apple has announced the M4 chip, its successor to the M3, that's currently found in a bunch of Macs and iPads. The M3 is an excellent chip and a real leap above the M2 that came before it. So the question is whether the M4 can manage a similar feat. Right now, the M4 is only in the iPad Pro, and that means information about how good it is and what it does. The M4 is only in the iPad Pro is rather limited. But if you're interested in finding out more, you are in luck, as we have gathered up everything we know about the Apple's M4 chip and compared it side by side with the M3. If you want to learn more about Apple's next chip and how it compares, then keep tuned in. At the time of this writing, the M4 chip is only present in the 2024 iPad Pro. That device has a few different configurations to the M4, including with varying amounts of memory storage. But right now, it's not found in any other Apple device. That said, the M4 is undoubtedly also coming to the Mac. Given its entry-level chip, we can expect to see it in the 14-inch MacBook Pro, both sizes of the MacBook Air, the iMac, and the Mac Mini. It is expected to land in the MacBook Pro, the iMac, and the iMac Mini around late 2024, with MacBook Air following in spring 2025. As for the M3 chip that's already out in the wild, it's currently in the 14-inch MacBook Pro, the 13-inch, and the 15-inch MacBook Air, and the 24-inch iMac. Unlike the M4, the M3 has never appeared in any iPad. The new iPad Air and previous generation iPad Pro have the M2 while the iPad and the iPad mini use the A4 and A15 chips respectively. There are a few differences under the hood between the M4 and M3 chips, but those differences are subtle rather than monumental. They are less significant than the changes experienced when Apple moved from the M2 to the M3, but we won't know for sure what kind of divergence there is a test until we get to test an M4 equipped device. Both the M3 and the M4 are made using a 3 nanometer manufacturing process, which is one reason for the more minor changes. The M2 was a 5 nanometer chip, and moving to 3 nanometer enabled Apple to radically improve performance and efficiency. However, it's worth noting that the M4 is a second generation 3 nanometer chip, which means there's some small improvement to its efficiency and output. One area where we can see immediate difference is the number of cores each chip comes with. The M3 has an 8-core CPU made up of 4 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores. This is supplemented by either an 8-core or 10-core GPU depending on the model, and a 16-core neural engine. The M4, on the other hand, has either a 9-core or 10-core CPU with either 3 or 4 performance cores and 6 efficiency cores, a 10-core GPU, and a 16-core neural engine. That it means it steps up of only a couple of cores here and there, but only increase in performance is definitely welcome. In terms of the neural engine, Apple says this can perform 38 trillion operations per second tops, making it more powerful than any neural processing unit in any AI PC today. The M2, for comparison, could reach 15.8 million tops, while the M3 reportedly hit 8 million tops. That looks like a huge win for the M4, but it's not quite the whole story as per Tom's Hardware. According to that outlet, the M4 score is 38 tops with the INT8 at the time. The M3, on the other hand, was 18 tops at FP16 precision. Once these two scores are equalized to INT8, the difference is about 5% in favor of the M4, far less than the apparent doubling between the two chips. There are a few other contrasts of note. The M4 is packed with 28 billion transistors compared to the M3 25 billion, and it has a memory bandwidth of 120 gigabytes per second compared to its predecessor's 100 gigabytes per second. There is also a dedicated display engine in the M4 that was absent in all Apple's chips before it, and this engine is used to handle the OLED display in the new iPad Pro. It's hard to assess performance differences between the M4 and M3 right now, as we haven't had the chance to review any devices outfitted with the M4. Apple's marketing materials also do not put the M4 up against the M3, presumably because the company is still selling M3 devices and doesn't want to undercut them. The iPad Pro M4 is instead compared to the M2 when the M3 launched. Meanwhile, Apple squared it up against the M1, so we can't see how the M4 and M3 compete against the common chip in the form of M2. We have had a small clue about M4's performance. However, recently the M4 chip turned up on benchmarking website Geekbench. There, the M4 achieved a score of 9,234 in the website's MLO6 test, which measures machine learning capabilities. That's about 23% higher than the M2 and around 10% better than the M3. So we're looking at an incremental change rather than seismic one. It's worth noting, though, that Geekbench tests are synthetic benchmarks rather than real-world ones, so they may not translate exactly into actual usage. It's also hard to draw conclusions about Mac performance based on iPad test results, both synthetic and real-world, as they are very different devices. For example, the MacBook Pro has active cooling, so it will likely perform better than the passively cooled iPad Pro and MacBook Air. MacBooks also have more space inside their shells, which helps with cooling and therefore performance. For those reasons, it's best to wait for reviews to draw any conclusions about the performance of the M3 and or M4 devices you are thinking of buying. The one thing that will really help users of the M4 chip is its inclusion of dynamic caching, mesh shading, and hardware accelerated ray tracing. These are not new to Apple users, they are already in the M3 series, but the iPad Pro didn't have these features when it was outfitted with M2. So while that's not an advantage the M4 has over the M3, it's worth considering if you're looking at getting an M4 iPad Pro. I hope you found that particular read comparing the M3 and M4 chip. Let's jump on to the Next article, which is the news that Nvidia has recently overtaken Qualcomm as the world's largest chip designer by revenue. Let me just quickly put up that particular read. So as it goes, Nvidia overtakes Qualcomm to become the biggest chip designer by revenue, which will give Jensen plenty to smile about. It may have escaped your notice, but word on the street is that Nvidia is doing rather well of late. Fourth quarter earnings released earlier this year revealed gigantic revenue and net income figures thanks to surging AI demand. And now a recent report from Trendforce shows that the company is overtaking Qualcomm to become the biggest chip designer by revenue too. The figures show that Nvidia raked in 58.268 billion in revenue in 2023, in contrast to the second biggest chip designer Qualcomm, which managed 30.9 billion over the same period. This puts Nvidia firmly at the top of the table, beating out Broadcom, AMD, MediaTek, and others by a substantial margin, and leaving the company with an estimated market share of 33%, up 15% over the previous year. Notable by their absence in these figures are Intel and Samsung, as the list doesn't seem to include chip makers with their own fabrication facilities. Presumably, Intel will appear once the, the, the switch to its internal foundry model is complete, splitting the fabrication and the design departments in the process. Still, these figures are sure to put a smile on the face of Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang, who has been busy announcing next generation Blackwell AI GPUs that already seem to be flying off the racks and has been occasionally found trying to drop off the odd unit in person. Nvidia is said to now have captured over 80% of the AI accelerator market thanks to its strong sales of its H100 AI GPU, with revenue growth projected to continue to rise to 2024 thanks to the new Blackwell chips. AMD's revenue, meanwhile, fell by 4% to 28.68 billion last year, with slight stumble attributed to sluggish PC demand and inventory reduction. While Nvidia appears to top the charts for now, it will be interesting to see if Qualcomm can put some of that lead back into sales of consumer chips. The company is said to be actively promoting the automotive market and expects revenues in the sector to more than double by 2023, or rather by 2030. As for AMD, its AI GPU M1300 series is expected to be a major revenue driver in 2024. Recent financial statements released by the company have shown that server CPU sales, alongside heavily increased AI GPU revenue, have both led to large financial gains in the first quarter of this year, although its gaming division appears to be struggling. Having a strong foothold in AI hardware seems to have done wonders for Nvidia's figures, and certainly bodes well for continued revenue in the coming months. The company seems to have been raking in the gains, and with these sort of earnings and a sustained AI demand that seems to show no signs of slowing, it's difficult to imagine any of its competitors knocking it off the top spot for a long time to come. I hope you guys found that article quite informative. It must be good times right now at Nvidia. They seem to be doing very well. Deservedly so. It's been a hardworking team the past couple of years, especially with cryptocurrency, which increased the demand for their GPUs, and the recent AI boom that has been happening the past couple of years. They have been the most perfectly positioned company to fully exploit. Hence, why their market capitalization now is over 2 trillion United States dollars. Our next article is going to be focused on SMIC, which is the Chinese equivalent of ASML. Let me just quickly put up the article here. So Chinese chip maker SMIC books 20% surge in quarterly revenue, but worry about future demand. SMIC, China's largest contract chip maker, said first quarter revenue surged by a fifth as both domestic and global customers rebuilt inventories, but expressed caution about the outlook for demand in the second half of the year. Revenue came in at 1.75 billion, the company said on Thursday. That topped an LSEG consensus estimate for about a 60% gain from a year earlier and marked the second quarter in a row of growth after steep declines for much of 2023. Compared to the fourth quarter, our global customers were more willing to build up inventory. While in the domestic market, some customers managed to boost their market share and wanted to lock in orders to solidify their position. CEO Zhua Hujian said during an earnings call on Friday. Domestic customers account for roughly 80% of SMIC's revenue. Joao added, however, that the outlook was unclear and SMIC was monitoring whether its customers had overestimated demand for the second half. He predicted a much milder rate of more than 8% revenue growth for 2024 overall. Shares in SMIC climbed 13% on Friday morning trade. The company mostly makes basic chips likely used in less sophisticated electronic products, but has gained some attention after a teardown of a Huawei smartphone last year revealed a SMIC manufactured chip that is one of the most advanced chips ever made in China. Huawei's latest smartphone, the Pura 70, also featured the chip produced by SMIC. As tensions with the US escalated, China has poured massive amounts of capital into bolstering its chip sector in pursuit of a technological self-sufficient, leading to a huge expansion in production capacity. China's total integrated circuit output surged 40% to 98.1 billion units in the first quarter of 2024, official data showed. That in turn has led to concern that excessive capacity will fuel a new wave of chip exports. Zhua said he wasn't concerned about oversupply, adding that chip plants are currently operating at high utilization rates and are not facing a shortage of orders. In contrast to the strong revenue growth, SMIC's unaudited profit attributed to owners plunged 69% to 71.8 million, undershooting forecasts as the company loaded significant depreciation costs for plant and equipment. I hope you found that quite insightful. Seems like SMIC is doing well. We wish them well going forward as a company. The more competition, the better for all consumers. Let me jump on to next article here, which is going to be on ASML, which is Europe's most valuable company. And the company really at the center of the tensions between China and the United States regarding chip manufacturing. China sends all high NA EUV machines to Intel in 2024. 5 to 6 of ASML's most advanced chip machines will end up at Intel this year. Samsung and SK Hynix, which also want to get a move on with high NA EUV technology early, may have to wait until the second half of 2025. Just before the end of 2023, ASML delivered its very first high NA EUV chip machine to Intel. The huge apparatus was first assembled in Veldhoven, after which it reached Oregon in the US in 10 discrete pieces. As of now, the machine is complete in a sense, meaning the scanner can now trace 10 nanometer lines in a silicon wafer. This is essential to bring the smallest semiconductor designs yet seen to a mass market. The machine can do so with extreme ultraviolet light that, thanks to better optics than ever, is cut above the EUV machines that currently churn out the latest iPhones, SoCs, graphics chips, network accelerators, and more. The next EUV machines are not coming to ASML's headquarters in Netherlands. ASML receives components from numerous suppliers and usually brings them together in Veldhoven for testing purposes. That was also the case with the first high-NA EUV machine, but probably not for new scanners. Intel may now be able to install them right away in its own chip factories, an option that significantly speeds up time to completion. Each scanner will cost Intel about 350 million euro, so that the total cost for the 2024 machines could well exceed $2 billion. South Korea's news site, the ELEC, reports that Samsung and SK Hynix will have to wait until the end of 2025. However, a second customer has already received a high-NA EUV machine from ASML, presumably TSMC. Now that it appears that the South Korean hardware manufacturers will have to wait, TSMC is pretty much the only possible identity for this unnamed second customer. In other words, 7 high-NA EUV scanners may exist by the end of 2024, 6 of which will be Intel. Having dawdled with EUV adoption half a decade ago, Intel now has a significant time advantage over chip competitors for high-NA EUV. The ASML machines will birth future chips likely to hit the market around 2027. Intel's large-scale procurement of the ASML equipment had already been hinted at by Intel's Director of Lithography, Hardware and Solutions, Mark Phillips. He emphasized at a press briefing earlier this year that Intel aims naturally require a few chip machines. Instead, Intel isn't planning on using the machines solely for its own design. Microsoft has Intel produce in its own semiconductors, while Nvidia may also come knocking. If Intel manages to cash in on its current high-NA EUV lead, perhaps even Apple will become interested again. That company famously switched to TSMC to make its own M1 chips and is currently fully committed to the Taiwanese giant chip. Now that is definitely very interesting. Only one company receiving all those EUV machines. I wonder how that can be seen from a moral or ethical lens. Let's just see how that pans out as well. I'll just quickly jump into our last article, which will feature a lightweight here, because normally I've been covering all the big leaders within the tech space. This is a rather unknown quantity. It's a very small Indian firm that has just announced manufacturing its very first SoC chip. Semiconductor company Mindgrove launches India's first commercial MCU chip. PIC-XV Partners backed fabless semiconductor startup Mindgrove Technologies said on Sunday that it launched what it claims is India's first commercial high-performance SoC system on chip. Named Secure IoT, it is designed for IoT devices and will likely cost 30% less than any other chip in similar segments. The startup, supported by IITM Pravatech Technologies Foundation and incubated in the IIT Madras. Okay, my apologies there. Let me just pick up from where I left there. The chip is designed to provide programmability, flexibility, security, and superior computing power for controlling applications on a wide range of connected smart devices. The chip can control everything from wearables like smartwatches to smart city devices like connected electricity, water, gas meters, to connected home devices like smart locks, fans, speakers, as well as EV batteries management system and control systems, amongst others. In addition to selling the chip, Mindgrove will offer design support to Indian brands to accelerate innovation and scale of production in India. India consumes over a billion chips per year, and anywhere between 10 to 50 million of them can be replaced by secure IoT. Further, there is widespread demand for microchips worldwide, and we expect global buyers to be excited about a new option from India. The pandemic revealed the wide gap between high-end and low-end players in the embedded system space, with the latter prioritizing cost and volume over the chip's actual performance. This led us to set out a design chip that target the middle of market. Secure IoT offers a wide range of features and is intended to be used with bare metal code or any microcontroller RTOS real-time operating system, thus opening up areas like traffic control systems, autonomous vehicles, medical equipment, etc. Mindgrove said. Mindgrove was founded by Shashwath and Sharan Srinivas J and is backed by Peak XV Partners, Special Invest, and Whiteboard Capital. I hope you enjoyed that last particular read. That marks the roundup for today's live podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed all the articles that I had for you. I hope I will try to make this a regular feature, posting it probably initially once a week, maybe once over the weekend. But if there is strong response from you, the listeners, then I'll probably make it more often. What I do is during the week I'll just post maybe 2 to 3 articles between 3 to 5 minutes, on what's the latest news that's happening in the semiconductor industries. So that's my current model. Monday to Friday, 2 to 3 articles each between 3 to 5 minutes, and then over the weekend I do one live stream. If the live streams are in demand and they are working well, then I can incorporate them into the weekdays as well. But I hope you enjoyed everything. Kindly like, share, and subscribe to the channel so that you can keep yourself fully abreast on everything that's happening in the semiconductor industry. I thank you. Have a great weekend ahead.